Welcome back to Skytech-Lens. The summer of 2025 marked a dramatic rupture in North American relations. President Donald Trump stunned the world by doubling tariffs on imported steel and aluminum, sending shockwaves through global markets. The real blow came soon after. A targeted 35% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, striking at the heart of a deeply integrated supply chain. For decades, materials had flowed seamlessly across the border, fueling industries like automotive manufacturing. The move was less a negotiation, more an economic declaration of war, plunging businesses into chaos and uncertainty. The White House justified the tariffs as a response to Canada's alleged failure to stop fentanyl trafficking, a claim Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney dismissed as baseless. Many saw the move as political maneuvering, not genuine security concern. The timing was suspicious, coinciding with Canada's announcement to recognize Palestinian statehood at the UN, fueling speculation of retaliation. Whatever the motive, the effect was immediate. North American trade was thrown into turmoil, threatening decades of cooperation. The economic shockwave was unleashed, and the system that had underpinned shared prosperity was suddenly at risk. The era of seamless trade was over. Trump's tariffs were the culmination of America First protectionism, aimed at forcing allies like Canada to realign trade in favor of U.S. industry. In Ottawa, Prime Minister Mark Carney responded with defiance, rejecting the White House's rationale and refusing to be drawn into the fentanyl debate. Instead, Carney's government unveiled a bold counter-strategy, a $1 billion fund to decarbonize Canada's steel industry. The plan was to leap ahead, replacing coal-fired furnaces with electric arc and hydrogen-powered systems. Canada would not compete on price alone, but on innovation and sustainability. This swift action set the tone for the dispute. Carney was not just playing defense, but launching a new economic offense. By investing in a future-oriented industrial strategy, Canada signaled it would absorb the shock and emerge stronger. The battle lines were drawn, two competing visions for North American industry and trade. Carney's message was Canada would not be bullied and would chart its own path. The trade war was now about more than steel. It was about the future of both nations' economies. The world was watching. Canada didn't wait for the storm to pass. It acted. Ottawa imposed quotas on steel imports from non-free trade partners and slapped a 25% duty on Chinese steel to prevent dumping. Carney announced a Build Canada with Canadian Steel initiative, reserving domestic steel for major infrastructure and clean energy projects. The centerpiece, a $1 billion investment in clean technology, making Canadian steel 93% emissions-free. This pivot wasn't just about the environment, it was smart economics. With the EU's carbon border adjustment mechanism looming, Canada's green steel would be exempt from new taxes, giving it a competitive edge. The crisis became an opportunity to leapfrog competitors and unlock new markets. Canada was no longer a victim of U.S. protectionism, but a leader in the green industrial revolution. The strategy, build at home, sell abroad, and turn crisis into prosperity. The tariffs' impact hit Detroit hardest, sending the American auto industry into chaos. Car makers like Ford and GM, reliant on Canadian steel, saw costs skyrocket and supply chains collapse overnight. Ford's CEO warned Congress the tariffs would cost billions in 2025 alone. U.S. steelmakers hiked prices, compounding the crisis for automakers. By mid-July, Canadian steel shipments dried up, and factories like Ford's River Rouge complex went idle. The metal blockade halted production, leading to layoffs and rising unemployment in Michigan. The very workers the tariffs aimed to protect were now facing job losses. The S&P 500 dipped, and Trump's metal recession became a buzzword on Wall Street. The tariffs, meant to bolster American industry, instead inflicted deep wounds on its most vital sector. The cost of disrupting a deeply intertwined economic relationship was now painfully clear. The fallout was immediate and severe. With the U.S. market closing, Canada pivoted aggressively to new global partners. The investment in green steel unlocked premium markets in Europe and Asia, where buyers sought low-carbon materials to avoid new taxes. Canadian steel exports to the U.S. dropped, but were offset by surging contracts with the EU, Japan, and India. Carney framed this as smart positioning in a changing world. Canada was no longer just a supplier to the U.S., but a global leader in sustainable industry. The strategy stabilized jobs and communities at home. while sending a clear message to Washington. US attempts to isolate Canada had backfired, pushing it to become more globally integrated. As American automakers struggled, Canadian industry thrived on new, resilient supply chains. The trade war had accelerated Canada's journey toward a diversified, sustainable future. The trade war's human cost was immediate and profound. In Windsor and Detroit, layoffs and halted expansion plans created daily anxiety for families tied to manufacturing. Canadian workers feared for their jobs. American workers faced furloughs as factories ran out of materials. The tariffs fractured communities and pitted workers against each other, eroding decades of cross-border solidarity. In Texas, oil drillers faced shortages of Canadian-made pipe, stalling projects and affecting jobs far from the auto belt. The dispute exposed just how interconnected the two economies had become. Policies meant to build walls instead sent shockwaves through families and communities on both sides. As the dispute deepened, Canada doubled down on domestic resilience. The Made in Canada mandate required all federally funded infrastructure to use Canadian steel, creating a reliable market for local producers. Provinces followed suit, enacting their own mandates and insulating the industry from global volatility. This marked a fundamental shift from decades of free trade to strategic self-reliance. The policy protected jobs and stabilized the industry during a period of uncertainty. Critics worried about higher costs, but supporters saw it as essential for economic independence. The mandate reshaped Canada's industrial landscape, forging a closer relationship between government and industry. It was more than a response to tariffs, it was a new chapter in Canadian economic identity. As tensions simmered, Canada escalated with a 25% global tariff on steel derivative products, impacting nearly 40% of U.S. steel-related imports. Ottawa insisted the measure was global, but the message to Washington was clear. Canada was committed to self-reliance and ready for a prolonged dispute. Diplomatic efforts faltered, and hopes for a quick resolution faded. The North American market fractured, replaced by tariffs, quotas, and protectionist mandates. U.S. industries faced shortages and high costs. Canadian industries rapidly reoriented to domestic and overseas markets. The world's longest undefended border was now guarded by economic walls. The seamless flow of goods was gone, replaced by a patchwork of barriers. The consequences for businesses and workers would be lasting. The steel dispute of 2025 fundamentally altered North American trade. Trump's tariffs, meant to revive U.S. industry, backfired, hurting automakers and workers, and sowing chaos in supply chains. For Canada, the crisis became a catalyst for modernization and global leadership in sustainable industry. The Made in Canada mandate and pivot to new markets fostered economic independence, though not without pain. The once integrated market is now fragmented, trust eroded, and the future uncertain. The lesson: aggressive protectionism can trigger unintended consequences, pushing allies to forge new alliances. The fractured friendship between the US and Canada stands as a cautionary tale for the world. Shared prosperity is fragile, and must be protected by partnership, not walls. Thanks for watching. Subscribe the channel for more updates.